It's an honor and a pleasure for me to introduce Mark Littlewood. I'd like to say a few words of background about Mark Littlewood, for those of you who don't already know who he is. Mark Littlewood is the Director General for the Institute for Economic Affairs. He read philosophy, politics, and economics at Balliol College, Oxford. He also studied at City University Law School. From 1995 on, Mr. Littlewood has been engaged in political communications, public relations, and public affairs. In 2001, he became campaigns director for the human rights group Liberty. In 2004, he founded the organization No to ID, which is campaigning against national identity cards and the database state. In December 2004, Mr. Littlewood was appointed head of media for the Liberal Democrats. Before taking up his position at the Institute of Economic Affairs, Mr. Littlewood served as communications director for the think tank Progressive Vision from 2008 until 2009. Ladies and gentlemen, please join me in a very, very warm welcome for Mr. Mark Littlewood. Thank you.
Well, thank you, and thank you for inviting me here today. I'm delighted that purely by coincidence, I hope that some of the proposals I bring forward are going to build a little on Matt's analysis, who was also at Balliol with me and who I haven't seen for about 20 years. As per usual, my second contribution will follow his brilliant first essay in the tutorials. But I want to, first of all, say a little bit about how the Institute of Economic Affairs approaches these sort of questions. We are a free market think tank. So our view is that state intervention, rules, regulations, blocks on the movement of capital, goods or people are intrinsically bad things for economic growth and for the happiness and well-being of the population. So our initial approach is our first best solution is a complete open doors policy. Any member of the human race should be able to travel to any corner of the planet and seek to work there, earn an income there and fulfill their dreams. That is our optimal scenario. But we don't live in an optimal world. And Matt touched on some of the economic issues and some of the political issues. I'm going to focus more, I think, on the economics. There's no doubt that in the United Kingdom, immigration is becoming a more and more salient issue. And it's becoming a more and more salient issue amongst the electorate with regard to concerns about immigration, not warmly welcoming immigration. The salience factor in the polls is from those who are concerned that too many people are entering the United Kingdom. And indeed, net migration is happening and is increasing and has remained high even throughout the recession period. We only started to see a population growth in the UK through immigration in the mid-1980s. Prior to this, there was an outflow, mainly to Australia, New Zealand, Canada, France and Spain, outpacing the influx of individuals moving to the UK. And a recent statistic causing shock and awe in the right-wing press was the Office of National Statistics predicting that the UK's population will hit an all-time high of 70 million by 2027. So the issue, I think, in political terms is one which is growing in scale and importance. It's worth stating why, on balance, immigration is a good thing in general and specifically for the United Kingdom economy. It has provided motivated, skilled workers. Migrants have acted to fill skill gaps, or in the initial bursts of immigration into this country 50 or so years ago, to take on jobs that the indigenous population were essentially unwilling to take on. You may make a culturally positive comment about immigration, but it adds to a more diverse and open society. The infamous speech by Enoch Powell predicting rivers of blood if we had a liberal immigration policy has not come to pass. That's not to say there is no racial tension in the United Kingdom, but nothing like on the scale that some of the Jeremiahs feared. So it has on balance been good for the United Kingdom economy. I think I'm quoting Matt's own figures here. If we look at a breakdown of the indigenous UK population with those who are living in the United Kingdom from foreign lands, the UK population of those of working age, and by country of birth, 78% are in employment, 4% are unemployed, and 18% are inactive. The IPPR stats show that Australians living here, 88% are in employment. France, 86%, Canada, 85%, Poland, 85%, Zimbabwe, 84%, and so on. So the contribution proportionately to the workforce is relatively greater than that of the indigenous population. And there are some statistics to suggest that actually first and second generation immigrants now, if you like, subsidise the indigenous population of the United Kingdom. However, and this goes rather to Matt's analysis of what a position would be from the right of the spectrum, there are, I think, concerns about the welfare state structure that we provide in the United Kingdom that make my optimal policy of unlimited open doors immigration a near impossibility. Now, I won't go into all of the details about qualification for various welfare entitlements because they do become complex, and it would be wrong to suggest, as some opponents of a liberal immigration policy do, that anybody can turn up and simply claim the full extent of British welfare benefits. But you can see some of the potential attractions that welfarism rather than work in the United Kingdom provide. The job seekers allowance here is £65.50 a week for an individual. It's about £3,500 a year, $5,500 US a year. GDP per capita income in Pakistan last year was $1,000 US, a fifth of what you can claim from job seekers allowance, which is by far, is by no means, manner or means, the most generous entitlement. Of course, I'm completely ignoring there the cost of living is enormously higher in the United Kingdom. But if your objective was to acquire money, which you could then transfer back to Pakistan to assist your family who are still living there, then that's a welfare benefit, a low-grade welfare benefit, which is potentially attractive. In Bangladesh, GDP per capita is about $700 US a year. And they constitute the seventh largest immigrant community in the United Kingdom, with nearly 250,000 people. Again, the average income back home in Bangladesh, a mere fraction of what could potentially be claimed on welfare here. Housing benefit. Matt referred to social housing. You could potentially be claiming £200 to £400 a week, and child benefit as well. Now, not all of these benefits are claimable the minute that you turn up at an airport or at a port, but they are potential incentives for economic incentives for migration which are not associated with productive economic activity, and they are on a scale which dwarfs the likely salary that individuals could earn back home if they were not to move here. This creates a serious market distortion. There have been concerns about access to the National Health Service, only intended for those legally living in the United Kingdom, but various court rulings have suggested that others here could be in receipt of treatment free at the point of use from the National Health Service. On public housing, going back to the previous Labour government, and this goes a bit more to the political problem, Margaret Hodge, who represents an ethnically diverse constituency in London, said, a recently arrived family with 4 or 5 children living in a damp and overcrowded privately rented flat with the children suffering from asthma will usually get priority over a family with less housing need who've lived in the area for 3 generations and are stuck at home with the grandparents. We should look at policies where the legitimate sense of entitlement felt by the indigenous family overrides the legitimate need demonstrated by the new migrants. A lot of black and Asian British people feel as strongly as some white families do that there is an essential unfairness in the system. They feel they've grown up in the borough, they're entitled to a home, and that the sense of entitlement is often overridden by a real need of new immigrant families who come in perhaps locked into private accommodation, poor accommodation. So there are pressures that I think brought about by a generous welfare system which mitigate against a complete open borders policy, notwithstanding that these welfare benefits are not automatic or necessarily easy to claim in each case. So this has led, I think, a large number of people to suggest there needs to be state interventions in controlling the nature, the type, and possibly even the number of people entering the country. And indeed, the new Conservative Liberal Democrat government is committed to a policy of capping the number of non-EU immigrants into the country. So the question is, if you are going to adopt such a policy as a second best option, if you are actually going to attempt to say that the cap on the number of people coming into the United Kingdom is, let's say, 50,000 per annum, how should you actually execute that policy? How do you select who those 50,000 people are or should be? And our present system is a deeply bureaucratic one. There is a whole measurement of different points, qualifying for, on a scale of different things, educational qualifications, what your earning potential is reckoned to be. And these points totals are tallied up, and you either make the grade or you don't, according to a bureaucratic form-filling process. That seems to me to be one of the least efficient, least flexible ways that we could possibly determine and manage what the nature and makeup of the 50,000, let's say it's 50,000, pick any number that you care to, cap of immigrants should be. So I want to just sort of outline a policy proposal which was made to the Institute of Economic Affairs by Professor Gary Becker, previous Nobel Prize winner in economics, about how we could operate a relatively liberal, marketised system of immigration. He was talking more about the United States of America, but it's as easily applicable to the United Kingdom in order to actually manage a capped process. And his suggestion was quite a simple one, that you simply sell the right to work in the United Kingdom and to live here, and you auction off the number of visas that you have centrally determined you are going to make available to non-UK citizens each year. He was very loath to actually put a price on what he thought that might be, but he thought comfortably $50,000 would be the sort of cost for a visa entitling you to enter and work in the United Kingdom. And you could, of course, if you wanted a more sophisticated proposal than just allowing people in with permanent residency and permanent working rights, sell visas in a number of different fashions. You might sell off the right to work in the United Kingdom for 3 years but not be entitled to claim any welfare benefits. You might sell off the right to live in the United Kingdom for 10 years and claim all welfare benefits which are available to UK citizens, or you might sell off a visa which gives you lifetime right to remain in the United Kingdom. So you could have different grades of visa. But it seems to me that this is a policy whose time has come, because not only does it, I think, address some of the economic issues surrounding potentially non-productive economic immigration, but I think it would address a large number of the political, cultural and resentment issues surrounding immigration into the United Kingdom at the present time. If someone has paid, let's say for the sake of argument, £100,000 for the right to enter the country, then resentment about that person having a job or even claiming welfare benefits is likely to be radically diminished. The anti-immigration illiberal lobby on the policy are able at the moment to point to a supposed, and in some cases actual, something-for-nothing immigration phenomenon. These people come in, they claim welfare, they take our housing, etc. A larger part of that may be myth, but nevertheless is a powerful political argument, which I think would dissipate enormously if there was actually a free sale or auction of visas. And the market would ultimately set the price. The fixed point in the sale would be the number of working visas that the UK government decided was appropriate to issue per annum, and the price of those visas would go up and down just as stocks and shares do. Now, some people say that this is unfair, favours the rich, only millionaires would be able to afford such a visa and come and retire here. I don't think that's the case at all. I think that in much the same way that university education is now increasingly funded, youngsters would either be able to take out a substantial loan themselves, this might even be underwritten by the United Kingdom government, or sponsoring large companies who wish to bring people over from any other part of the world would consider that part of the overall salary package they are offering to young people to move into the country, possibly to be paid off by that employee over a number of years. So I don't think that I don't think that even on a high price visa along the lines of perhaps 50,000 US dollars or up to 100,000 pounds sterling would necessarily make immigration the preserve of the super rich. I think you could have a borrow to be here situation. You crucially get round the bureaucratic problem that we face at present, which reached, I think, levels of utter ludicrousness around the issue of professional footballers, who are now going to be exempted, actually, from the UK's cap. But the position of a non-EU resident who wished to come here to play professional football, typically South Americans, but not always South Americans, was that unless they could show that they played 75 to 80% of the games for their national football team, which is quite a high ask. If you're in the Brazilian national football team, you are one of the very best footballers on the planet, then it would be assumed that their job could be adequately fulfilled by an indigenous Brit. Football clubs, my own football club, I know, had to go through this process several times, would then appeal the process and actually seek to secure testimonials from other footballers and football managers and the like to suggest that this particular Brazilian actually had a skill playing in left midfield for this football team that was not going to be easy to fill with a British footballer of a similar type. And I kid you not, bureaucrats would then sit round a table watching videotape of this footballer's performance, comparing and contrasting it with similar performances from similar British footballers playing in a similar position at a similar level, and then reach a conclusion about whether a working visa should be issued to a Brazilian or an Argentinian to play left midfield for Manchester City or Liverpool. A quite insane basis on which to form any kind of immigration policy. I appreciate that I'm picking on a highly specialised, extremely well-paid sector, but the Becker solution to this solves it in one. The football club can decide who they want to play, left midfield, right midfield, or in goal for them. Can be of any nationality and would simply need to buy the visa to enable that person to practice their trade in the United Kingdom. No more bureaucracy, form filling, or the watching of videos to determine at a bureaucratic level somebody's competence, whether it be to be a midfielder for Manchester City or whether it be to be a brain surgeon, a train driver, or anything else. The market and the participants in that market, both the individual want to be immigrant and the individual putative employer, can reach the decision about whether buying that right to live and work here is actually worth it for the anticipated rate of return. So I think that there is an elegant second best solution to this problem. I would like to see a much more radical liberalisation, transformation and reduction of the welfare state in general in the United Kingdom. But in the absence of that occurring, I believe there are perverse, unproductive incentives to move to the UK. I believe even if that happens on a modest scale and you can economically show that immigration is beneficial to the wider UK economy, it is one of the principal causes of the political resentment of the indigenous population, and that Professor Becker's elegant second best strategy has much to commend it. It would generate revenue for the UK Exchequer. It would ensure that the market determines within a preset government cap the workforce that we want rather than bureaucratic form filling, and I think would go some considerable way to obviating the often misguided but nevertheless sincerely felt view that a large proportion of the immigrant population are parasitical on the indigenous population. So as a way of moving forward on this issue, without solving it perfectly, I think the time has come to tackle immigration by selling the right to live and work in the United Kingdom and other desirable destinations. Thanks very much for your attention.
Thank you, Mark. We only have time for a few questions. Anyone have a question they want to pose? Okay, here we are.
Hi, my name's Randolph from the University of Exeter. How are you finding response to that paper? Because I'm surely kind of a lot of sort of left-wing think tanks are going to be kicking up a bit of a stink, and yeah.
We have to ask the gentleman in front of you. But well, I mean, not bad actually. In terms of the initial response, people were surprised that a liberal free market think tank was putting so much effort in arguing for what we readily accept is the second best position. We don't think that the United Kingdom government is able to perfectly judge what the optimal population of the country is for productive economic purposes. But I think within the Conservative Party, and certainly at senior levels of the Home Office, they've got a difficult political decision to make, in that it may be the case that the whole cap on the number of people coming in unravels completely and they abandon the policy, essentially. And there is a sort of reluctant acceptance, even not a public acceptance, that this can't be controlled. But I think that they are already running into so many problems with the bureaucratic approach. I've heard one story, merely anecdotal, but one of our leading universities, not the one that Matt and I went to, the other one, was seeking to get a very senior academic over from India. I think a Nobel Prize winner, I may be wrong about that, maybe in a Nobel shortlisted candidate. And this professor was asked to fill in a 68-page form to prove his credentials to be a high-skilled worker, and did actually think that the statement, "I have been shortlisted for a Nobel Prize," probably should have been sufficient to underscore his credentials. So it's causing those sort of difficulties and problems. If they're determined to persist with the cap, and I think they probably are, then increasingly as the bureaucratic approach to it fails, I think it's an idea that they could embrace.
So if there is any more questions?
Yeah, I just wanted to take the opportunity, given that Mark pointed it my way, to reassure the questioner that as someone who leads the migration work at a centre-left think tank, I'm entirely sort of not, we're not offended by this idea. I think it's an extremely interesting idea that we ourselves have been looking at as well. As you say, it is elegant in economic terms, and there is a strong argument for saying that the current system of a combination of sort of rules and bureaucracy and a cap, which will come close to a sort of random lottery if it's oversubscribed, is almost the worst of all worlds. The only thing I would say, and it is a genuine point, not a sort of not a vandalism point, is the devil is in the detail of exactly. I mean, you talked about a wide range of kinds of visas you would sell, what the level you would set the fee at, how much you would expect to get employers to pay or migrants themselves. All of those are the things which need to be worked out. There are some countries that do things similar to this already, including Singapore. So it's definitely an area which I think people should be looking at. But as you say, the problem the government has is that they have made a series of high-level political choices which actually limit their room for manoeuvre on these questions.
That's true. If I could just pick up on the devil in the detail point. I mean, one obviously difficult question is, what rights do your spouse, family or dependents have once you have bought your ticket to the United Kingdom, if any? Or do you have to double the price for your spouse and quadruple it if you've got 2 kids? And if you've got 8 kids, what's the actual price of moving in? And that would be, I think, one of the most complex things of determining what you were going to sell. So there would be a difficult menu of options to construct. But I still think that you can use a market mechanism, even within a bureaucratic controlled list of options. You can still use a market mechanism in order to work out who acquires those rights.
We have time for 2 more questions only.
Hi, my name is Owen. I'm at Durham University right now.
Your idea of borrow to buy, for example, you suggested as one of the possible ways of doing this. Personally, it terrifies me. Let's say, I don't know, France put, you know, £100,000 limit on me buying a visa in France. And so I've just paid, I'm already £20,000 in debt in the UK. So thank you for that already. But to be fair, no, I do owe that money. That's for universities. I'm paying another 10 grand for masters, so that's already 30 grand. And let's say I then want to go to live in France, so another £100,000. The prospect of £30,000 alone is terrifying me because already I'm going to have to earn a decent amount of money to try and pay that off. What kind of money am I going to have to earn to start paying off 100 grand? And will I be paying it off well after I'm dead as well? Which is seems more than likely.
Well, I appreciate you giving a hypothetical example. This would only apply to non-EU immigration, right? So at the moment, you have the perfect right to move to Paris and make your way in the world. All you need to do is to buy yourself a Eurostar ticket. There's no... Well, okay, let's take Australia. Let's take the United States of America as an example. You may reach the conclusion, you may not, but you may reach the conclusion, and let's assume that the price to become a UK citizen for life is £100,000. You may reach the conclusion either A, that your earning potential is £100,000 greater in the United States of America over the course of your lifetime. That's actually probably not a bad guesstimate comparing the average sort of UK graduate worker with the average US graduate worker, probably a fairly fair estimate. Or you may decide for other reasons that the lifestyle of the United States of America, its culture, its Hollywood studios, amusement parks, whatever else you like about America, is worth you taking some sort of hit on your overall cash living standards. If you decide against that, don't go. I mean, that is exactly what we are seeking to ration. I mean, this is a rationing process. I said at the outset, I don't approve of a rationing process, but once you've got to ration it, you've got to decide whether to give the American visa to you, and you're not willing to pay £100,000, or to give it to me, and I am. Well, there's only one solution to that, which is you give it to me. That's how the market works. Whoever buys the visa gets that right. I mean, it seems to me that you have a particular personal issue with debt, reasonable enough. You may be the sort of person who wants to rent a house rather than take out a substantial mortgage. But those individual market decisions seem to me should be left down to you, because the alternative is that you go through some horrendous bureaucratic form-filling process to attempt to get a green card to work in New York, or if that's your particular desire, and that does not seem to me to be anything like as efficient or anything like as liable to create the optimal outcome as simply charging a market rate.
Maybe one final question. Okay. Hear a different voice, actually.
Hi, my name's Rose Sinclair-Wilson. I'm from Cambridge University. I was wondering what the funding is behind the Institute of Economic Affairs, and what you say to critics of right-wing think tanks who say that they're kind of PR lobby groups for big corporations.
Mm-hmm. Well, so I suppose that's not specifically on the immigration point. The IEA is funded entirely through private donations. We don't accept any grants from any government or any state. We do accept individual personal donations from civil servants. So there are some people who are on the state payroll who are giving us money. Our overall turnover is a little over £1 million a year, which I used to go around and tell everybody was about the annual turnover of a single branch of Pizza Express, until I was corrected by the chairman of Pizza Express and told it was only about half the annual turnover of a single branch of Pizza Express. Our funding is made up of about approximate terms 4 roughly equal £250,000 portions. One is individual donations, individual people writing us cheques from anything from 40 quid to 40,000 quid, that sort of range, about £250,000 from that. We get about £250,000 from companies, typically given the typical grant from a company would be 5 or 10,000. We get about £250,000 from charities whose mission is to promote economic understanding, and we get about £250,000 from our own investment funds, our own capital. I'm completely unapologetic about how we're funded. We do not insist that our donors render themselves public. We consider it to be a private matter for them. We have no complaints if they wish to. Private matter for them to explain to the wider world why they're giving us money and how much they're doing. And I am a little concerned that we are potentially moving into a culture of debate in the United Kingdom in which anybody contributing to wider public discourse who receives any private money is considered to be kind of crooked lobbyist who doesn't really mean what they're saying, whereas anybody who is funded by the government is considered to be an absolute neutral observer of all they survey. And I don't consider that to be the case at all. There's no such thing as neutral, really. There are, competing opinions and positions. We do also put in place, just to reassure you, I can't speak for other think tanks of a similar ideological persuasion to the IEA, extremely robust editorial processes and procedures. So we, for example, refused to do any commissioned research. If the tobacco industry contacted us and said, we'd like to give you £100,000 to write something on why cigarettes are not bad for you, we'd hang up the phone. All of the research is peer-reviewed, and no donor to the IEA has any ability to say, well, I need you to reach conclusion X. So that's about as robust as I think a think tank can be.
Well, Mr. Littlewood, on that note, I would like to thank you from my side on behalf of the Institute for Cultural Diplomacy, and I'd ask you to please join me also in expressing our gratitude. Mr. Littlewood.
I wonder if I could, we've brought, I think, about 10 or so of these. This is a short pamphlet that we produced which gives Gary Becker's lecture. We've got about a dozen or so there. We can only get a dozen into Kimberly's handbag, I'm afraid, but it is also available for free to be downloaded in PDF format on the IEA's website, www.iea.org.uk. Thanks very much indeed.
Thank you very much for that. Thank you. So, now, Mr. Littlewood, that was an excellent address, and it was good to touch on the issue of economics.